Thank you. Hey, the thing is that I'm actually not a philosopher, so I'm just faked myself on this panel, and so that means that I'm not going to be as prepared as the other guys, but I'm going to talk freely instead. And what I'm going to talk about is I got this kind of assignment from Stefano to talk about one meaningful design decision and its philosophical implications, more or less. And I looked back at my last contract work before going back to academia, which was doing a DLC pack for Democracy 3. And I looked back at it and thought I should maybe talk about that, but then I realized, no, that does not communicate the actual questions I asked myself while working on that specific game. I'm not the main maker of Democracy 3, I was just contracted to do an expansion to it. So instead of talking about what I did back then, I decided that I go for a topic that is current and try to give you a little bit of an insight in my thought process during making one of the detailed design decisions in Democracy 3, in the Clones and Drones DLC actually. So technically the whole game design for this game is done in Excel, actually Google spreadsheets, but it doesn't matter. And what you do is you kind of set parameters for a neural network that then runs on its own, and you model things as bunches of information that have influence on each other. For example, one of the things that I modeled in the expansion I made that looked at the near future and near future challenges to policymakers was a potential food crisis that is based on an increase in the food price. So I had to find factors that contribute to changes in the food price, and also the effect of what does the change in food price mean. What is, for example, the relation between the food price and obesity, which is a challenge we are facing in the Western world. Well, not only in the Western, I even think. And of course I couldn't anticipate, I tried to anticipate a lot of future challenges to policymakers, like near future, let's say from now until 2050. But one of the challenges I didn't anticipate was, of course, this one challenge that a lot of politicians that get paid far better than I was paid for it didn't anticipate either. So let's pick this challenge and see how we could model it in this model of a strategy game where you make this, for which I made a very formal game design. The media calls it the refugee crisis, which is an interesting word because it's not a crisis of the refugees, it's more a state crisis triggered by an actually very predictable turn of events, in hindsight at least. But I will just use this name because this is how I would model it in the game. But in the language that we have used while working on democracy, we would call it a situation because it's something with a beginning and hopefully also with an end, which is kind of abstract if you think of this. I don't actually believe that it has an end. Anyway. We would model it as a situation that has a beginning and an end. And it has certain effects. I will not talk so much about the effects, but more about factors affecting the crisis itself as a situation. So the effect would, for example, be red arrows means thumb down, green arrow means thumb up. So yes, it leads to angry patriots, so their mood actually changes to the negative. That's why the arrow is red. The religious. I would have to carefully look at how the religious people actually, let's call them just the religious people, because this is the level of detail we have in this specific game. I have no idea how they would actually, as a whole group, if they were one group, how they would think about it. But assumedly, since the dominant religions here are different than the dominant religions of those refugees coming, I guess it's more a thumb down again. Immigration, yes, there is more immigration. More immigration puts pressure on wages. At least that is assumed. Do we have numbers for that? I don't even know. But low wages mean less income tax, so that is an easy relationship we can build. And trade unions, of course, object low wages, and so on. Ethnic minorities, as the Austrian elections at least have proven, the existing ethnic minorities are not that fond of new ethnic minorities entering the country. So they get grumpy too. And it puts some pressure on foreign relations, of course. So how do we mitigate that problem? Of course, I would have to add means to prevent the crisis from happening. We know one of the means, it's totally preventing the crisis from happening, but it makes a patriot super happy. So that's one of the policies that I would put in the game, that you can erect border controls or put a lot of money in that. And of course it reduces the crisis. Well, that's how I would model it in the game, at least. You see, I'm more about asking questions than answering here. Then, does more police result in less or more crimes? That is a very interesting question, because of course you get more crimes because more crimes are just, it leads to more criminal convictions at least, but I'm talking about crime now. I don't know, but more police might at least reduce the effects of what is perceived or what is usually called the crisis in the refugee problem sphere. I guess it indirectly would also make patriots happy again. What if I add specific policies to this game? So you're in Democracy 3, in case that is not clear, you're playing a politician, so you issue policies. One of the policies you could issue that is actually not that expensive is Mare Nostrum, or building camps. What if I add those values? Well, of course, they cost some money, so they might have an influence on your GDP. You have to pay them with something. Also, refugee camps obviously don't make patriots happy either. It all comes down to the patriots that might or might not vote for you in the next election. So you actually, as a player of the game, you might want to make them happy, unless you're playing like me. I should hurry on. And when it comes to international relations, sadly, Democracy 3 is not a game that has a very detailed model of that. Actually, there is just one value called foreign relations, and if it's high, then you're doing good internationally, and if it's low, you're doing bad. So it is definitely not detailed enough to be a factor that usefully contributes to modeling the refugee crisis. So I just put it here with a dotted line. And also there are feedback circles that are generated when you are building this mathematical model that is the game design in Democracy 3. So instead of answering any philosophical, I'm way over time, sorry. You didn't stand up and move here. Thank you. So maybe the one question you can ask is that I ran across a lot while modeling this game by doing this mathematical model that is then read as something contextualized by the player, is the split between cause and effect that gets totally meshed up in this weird neural network that affects each other all the time. I don't know, but definitely that's how I would most likely naively model it, and that's something to discuss later, I guess. Thank you.